All right, we are live. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you another Unlocking Age of Sigmar. In this episode, I have Will from the very interestingly named channel, a creative name to stand out, joining me to go over Khorne Bloodbound. Welcome, Will.
Hello, hello. Glad to be here.
Now, this is a bit of a difference. So we've had Will on before. Will is prominent in the YouTuber community for Warhammer analysis, Warhammer bat reps. I think you have some of the best, if not the best quality bat reps out there. But one big change is you're on a different time zone than what I'm used to when we've had you on before.
Yeah, I used to be in Hawaii, but recently I've gotten to move all the way back to DC. So I'll be here for a little bit, and hopefully I'll get to meet you sometime.
I hope so. I've got a lot of free time over the summer. I don't know if there's any events over the summer that we may be able to meet somewhere in the middle, or maybe we could find some way to do that. It would be great to get a game in with you. How long have you been on the East Coast for?
3 years, probably, maybe more. It's always up in the air.
There's plenty of time for us to meet up. All right, well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. You used to have a couple of these where I think you were getting up really early in the morning when Age of Sigmar first came out. We did some unlockings.
Yeah, or it's something. I'm sure most people made the sacrifice for me.
Well, for my time zone, it wasn't so bad. For yours, I think it was.
Oh, yeah, it was. I was getting up at like 6 in the morning. I forgot about that.
I remember that one time, and I could tell that you must have just woken up, and I felt so bad because I didn't even think about the time zone. You just said, "Yeah, I'll do that early unlocking with you."
What I do to sacrifice for this community.
Yeah, well, we not like we're all any of us are getting paid, but yeah it's all a matter of time. All right, so great. Now listen, you have an excellent channel. I'm a big fan. I really like the quality that you put into your battle reports, and you actually have a spotlight that you of units that you've been going through recently as well, talking about various units, and mostly it's been about the army, the war scrolls from the army that we're going to be talking about today. Is that correct?
Yep. I guess the show is called, or the series is called AOS Close-Ups, and each week I look, or the plan is each week, they probably average a week, but I look at each a unit, I go over their background, their rules, and then some other miscellaneous topic, whether it's about tactics or maybe if they're really powerful, how to defeat them. But take my advice with a grain of salt. I'm as new to this game as anybody else. It's just my one perspective, and it's been inspired by a comic book channel whose name escapes me right now, but he kind of does the same thing with comic books, as far as like he splits his thing up into 3 different sections and goes over it. And so I was inspired by that.
Is that Comics Explained?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that guy. I like his content. He does a good job.
Great.
He's been getting hosed a little bit with YouTube recently, unfortunately. So I wish him luck. All right. So we're going to go over. Well, actually, before we even get into that, let me just ask you another question. That is the impetus behind your spotlight, your close up on a particular unit. What was the you had a name change recently? Well, no, I mean not so recently, but what was the? It kind of makes me laugh. I'm sure there's a little bit of a tongue in cheek there. What's the reasoning for the name of your channel?
Well, one, it was my name beforehand, before Google made me go to my real name, and then at some point they allowed me to have it back. I don't know. People come up with ridiculous names, and I don't have anything special to think about, so I just kind of mocked it. So my name is creative name to stand out because I can't be bothered to think of a more creative name.
Yeah, well, mine is a little bit silly, so yours is a lot more creative than mine. Mine is my first 2 initials, the number 1, because that's what I became known as, MC1 CSMO, back when I first made my first handle. And CSMO is just an abbreviation for Cosmo. And the reason why I changed it is because if you spell it out, it looks like machismo, which is not me. So when I started doing this, I was like, MC1 Gamer, yeah, why not? And it's just stuck, but it's just one of the silliest ways to come up with a friggin' handle. There's been a lot more creative ones. I probably should just stuck with my first name and left it at that. But yeah, I like yours a lot better. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to be talking today about Khorne Bloodbound. Now, I've been doing a series here with unlockings for quite a while, since the beginning of Age of Sigmar, going through the compendium scrolls, which are the legacy scrolls, legacy armies from 8th edition that were carried over. Now, those are still viable, still very capable, but now there's a lot more going on in terms of list building. And if you are a longtime player of Age of Sigmar, you'll understand this. If you're not, then just to give you a little bit of quick background, there's been a lot of changes. Now there's points, there's some organized structure on how you build your lists with the new General's Compendium that's coming out. It's dropping next week. There's been a lot of leaked photos. I have one in hand, so I have some pictures that I can share. This is a great way to create, instead of the way we've been playing, which is open play, free form, and there's a lot of structure that's been imposed, even comp at various organized events that allow you, some to rein in some of the crazy. But now there's a method for you to create an organized format, or if you just want to use the point structure to get an idea of that your both sides are fairly equal, so that one person isn't just plopping their entire collection on the table against your starter set, then this is a great guide to use. There's some great stuff to get in this book. I highly recommend everybody pick up the General's Handbook, but this is kind of what we're going to try to use to kind of build a list. Now, I'm going to be doing more than just this, because I'm revisiting a lot of old lists to see how they might work with synergies. We're starting to see a new battle tome that, with the Sylvaneth, for example, that has specific Sylvaneth advantages called allegiances that are being instituted. One of the major components of the General's Handbook, but beyond points, is for match play is depending on what your allegiance is, what focus you are. If you're just staying within your faction, then it's chaos, destruction, and whatnot. But if you go deeper into a sub-faction, like, for instance, Khorne Bloodbound, you get certain benefits. We haven't seen the new battle tomes come out for all of them. Only the Sylvaneth has come out as of the taping of this episode. But we should be seeing more of these, whether they're digital downloads through the app, whether they're through the new White Dwarf, or whatever it might be, or even a new battle tome. We should be seeing over time more and more of these things added on. But even if you're not specifically Khorne Bloodbound, you have the advantage of taking the allegiance capabilities that are specific within Chaos. And what this running series is, and I'm having Will come on board to kind of give me his expert opinion, is how, if I'm really interested in this type of a list, how should I build a list? So we're going to get, again, Will's expert opinion, and then I'll throw some of my 2 cents in, and we'll see if we can give you an idea how you can build your list. This is by no means the only way to build a list. It's a guideline, but it'll help you at maybe a little bit of a shortcut. And if you're really interested in this type of an army, great. I'm going to be running a whole bunch of them. I'm looking to do Skaven next week with Vince from Warhammer Weekly. I'm looking to get Tom on for a whole bunch of them. I have a bunch of people lined up for these. And everybody's going to be sending me a list. But that doesn't mean you, as a viewer, can't send me a list. I've got local people sending me a list now all the time. I had 2 people send me them today, and I may just do a short show just with their list by myself and go over them and just say how I would build it. But people have sent me their army list that they want to play, and then I built it out. So Will has his that he built, and we'll see what kind of an army we can build with some of the rules. And so just to go over some specifics as far as how this differs from Age of Sigmar historically. You have battlefield roles, so you have leaders, which are mostly characters. You have behemoths, which are typically the monsters, but not always. Artillery and your standard units, and then you have your battle line, which are like old core units. They're your auto includes. And I've got a little gnat that's like buzzing me right now. He's doing strafing runs on me. So this is how now you have a limitations on how you can build your list. We're going to look at 2,000 points today, which is going to be the standard for this show, but I can also do 1,000 and 2,500. I've had people ask me that because I know that at least one shop that I'm playing at is breaking them up into these 3 different categories. Depending on how big your army point structure is, depends on how many what's the cap on how much you can take. You could take, like, say, in 2,000 points up to 6 leaders. You could take up to 4 behemoths. You need to include minimum of 3 battle line core units. And then, of course, everything else mixes and matches out. I think it's maximum. I think it might be up to, I don't know if it's 0 to 2 or 0 to 4 artillery for that size. It might be 0 to 4. So based on those maximums, you build your list. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at that. But before we get into that, Will, I've seen a lot of your videos. I think I've seen every one of your videos, actually. Nice. I know that Chaos is a major presence in what you've played. I know you played Dark Elves. I don't know if you still do that. But why Khorne Bloodbound? What is it? What does it speak to you? What do you like about it? What do you feel its strengths and weaknesses are? Talk to us.
Okay, well, I only got Khorne because I bought the starter set. I only bought the starter set because I figured it was a good deal. I really had no desire to play the Storm. What are they called?
Sigmarines? Stormcast, the Stormcast Eternals.
And the Khorne Bloodbound. But as soon as I opened the box and I saw how detailed the Blood Reavers were, I was kind of sold. And so I started putting them together. And then when they had that second release with the Slaughter Priest and the Skull Grinder, those were just amazing models that I think they were types of models we'd never seen before at that point. They were just so unique to the game that I just knew I had to go from that point. So, and then of course I did play Tzeentch beforehand, and I do kind of, I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm a kind of a good guy type of player, but I always end up buying bad guy armies. Like I always like in my mind, I'm like, oh, I want to do Empire, or I want to do Britonia, or I want to do one of those things. But when I get to the shop and I'm looking at models, I'm always pulled towards the evil stuff. So, yeah, overall, I like it. One thing I wanted to touch on before we move on to the next one was the 2,000 points that we're going to be talking about, which I thought was interesting. My personal preference is that's really big. That's too big for me. I think if I were playing, I'd want to play 1,000 points. But maybe, is that what your feeling is? Is that tournaments are going to go to a 2,000 point system?
Well, it's different. I know that one shop I'm going to tomorrow night, their consideration for 1,500 points per game is that they want to try and get as many people as possible. They have 3 tables on their first floor, and they have what I call the fire trap, which is upstairs, has about another 6 tables, but I wouldn't want to be up there. There's no exit. There's only one way in, one way out, man. And if there's a fire, I don't think you're going to get out of that place. But on the first floor, there's only 3 tables. So you could be waiting to play on the main floor. And they want to try and get 2 games per table. So you got to divide up the table. So 1,000 points is typically a 4x4. 1,500 points is fine for a 4x4. Their tables are typically 8x4, but you know I think that's why they want to do that. For a 2,000 point game, most of what I'm hearing from most places, that's probably going to be the standard. When I've built out the list, it looks like a 2,500 point 8th edition army in most cases. The difference is that there's less stuff on the battlefield actually in many cases because there's more monstrous units in Age of Sigmar, and there's more monstrous characters, leader types, big giant characters riding big giant monsters. So that's more points that get sucked up by that stuff. So you actually have smaller armies in some respects. So a 2,000 point game, more often than not always, depends on how you build it. I mean, you could have this massive Skaven army with just lots of bodies, or 100 zombies in an undead army. But most of the time, what I've seen is the general equivalent of a 2,000 point is anywhere from between roughly 2,250 to 2,500 points of 8th edition. I am already seeing 2 events where they're saying 2,000 is not enough. They want to go 2,250.
Oh my God. I just played a game with my whole collection of Khorne, and when the points dropped, it was only 1,460 of that's how big my army was. And I thought that was a massive game. Like, it was just such a huge game. I think Khorne, when we go over these lists, we're going to see that because they lack really a huge monster besides the one from Forge World that I'm aware of. Their armies are going to tend to be huge. And I think for good reason, when we go over those, there's a reason for this, but I don't know. I just think I would rather play a 1,000 point game, not only for that, but also I feel like it causes people to not be able to take everything. Like, they need to learn how to, take and pick and choose, make sacrifices, not have everything in their army.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I looked over the list. I don't know it as well as you do. I've played against it a few times, but your list is specifically Khorne Bloodbound. It's a subcategory. If there was a battle tome, then there would also be like an allegiance, expression of allegiance abilities, traits, spells, and artifacts that hasn't released yet, and hopefully it will happen sometime soon. You could take this Khorne list and supplement some of this stuff with other things in Chaos. You could supplement it. It's complete. You could be allegiant to Chaos and just take whatever you wanted. So if you didn't have any behemoths, you could take a Bloodthirster or 2, and that would eat up some of your points and make your army smaller, but also give you some dimension. There's other things you can take that you didn't put in your list that's not in the subcategory, and there's really not a lot of benefit to just staying within the subcategory. But that's the army you want to play. So if you do that, and the army is mostly infantry types, you're probably gonna have a lot more bodies.
Yeah.
So, but. Other than that, I mean, because look, if to the audience, if you think that 2,000 points is too big, play 1,500. It's going to put more caps on leaders. It's going to put more caps on behemoths. It's going to put more limitations. The games are going to be smaller, but they'll be faster. Maybe you can get more games in. I know the place I'm going to tomorrow, they're actually doing it where you have 1,500, 2,000, and 2,500 point games, as part of the summer campaign, and you need to play different opponents and at different point levels in order to submit each of your. You can play as many games as you want, but you only can submit one of each of those types each week. So you'd have to have a spectrum. So tell me what. So you liked the look of this army. That was mainly it. How about how it plays, given your experience in playing with other armies and against other armies in Age of Sigmar? What's their strengths? What's their weaknesses? What's the play style of this army?
Man, I think it really plays towards the fluff of the game. So much stuff dies, both on your opponent's side and on your side. You have to you kind of have to accept that you're going to lose tons and tons of models when you're playing your game. You're not going to have like a few elite units that are just going to survive the whole battle. These guys are going to be wiped out one by one. If you would like to bring up the list, we can just go over my list though.
Sure. Let's go over your list, then we can take a look at how the allegiance abilities might adapt to it. Did you take any battalion scrolls at all?
Yeah, there's one labeled on that.
All right, great. Let me go pull that up now. I'm going to go ahead and share my
So while you do that, I'll talk about what I think the deficiencies are, and through that, you kind of build your list accordingly. So when we look at the Bloodbound specifically, they don't have any behemoths or monsters. I know that they have that the skull, whatever it's called. I've never even put mine together. The Khorne.
Yes.
Khorne. So I think he's considered a monster, but he's definitely not a behemoth. And so that's just a thing that the Bloodbound don't have. The other thing is that they don't have any shooting, which makes sense because they're, themed to be a close combat army, both in rules and in the fluff. And so that's two major factors that are just taken away from your army unless you want to bring other stuff in. So considering you don't have any giant monsters to fight other people's giant monsters, and a lot of other armies have a lot of choice when it comes to that, you have to look through your army and say, okay, well, what do I have that can handle giant monsters if I don't have my own and I don't have shooting to take them down from afar? And I think everybody would agree with me that the best answer to giant monsters are Wrathmongers. And that's why what I would imagine would be a good list is a Wrathmonger, like 3 units of Wrathmongers at minimum size. And since I was taking those already, I decided I would take their battalion, because any unit within 8 inches of any of these Wrathmongers, they don't have to take a battle shock test. So
well, I just pulled up the PDF for it, so maybe we can go over what the Wrathmongers can do and why they're so good in this role that you're putting them in.
Okay, well, so Wrathmongers, when we look at their base stats, they're okay. They hit 50-50. They wound a little bit above average. They have a rend characteristic, which is always great, but they only do 1 damage. But again, they have 4 attacks, and if they charge, their hit modifier goes up to a 3. So you end up getting a lot of accurate attacks that have a rend characteristic, which I think is really important. So overall, as long as you're charging with them, I think they're very accurate, efficient attacks. The thing that makes them good against monsters in particular is their special rule. If you'd like to read that, because it's a little too hard for me to read.
Sure, no problem. So which one? Is it their Wraithflails, their Crimson Haze, or the Blood Fury?
The Blood Fury.
Okay, so each time and by the way, just so everybody knows, these guys, if you can't read this, they have a 5-up save, which is not great. They get 3 wounds each, and they've got these awesome chain hammers. they're swinging around. They're Wraithflails. Or, yeah, Wraithflails, it looks like. Wrathflails, excuse me. All right, Blood Fury. Each time a Wrathmonger is slain in the combat phase, the spilt blood drives the enemy into a berserk rage in which they can no longer tell friend from foe. You can choose an enemy model that is within 2 inches of the slain model. Immediately attack with the enemy model you chose as though it were part of your army. I have been victim of this, by the way. The model can attack its own unit and even itself. No enemy model can be chosen in this way more than once in a phase. I had my general knock a dwarven lord on shield bearers, kill himself, and his own little shield bearers. They just basically rip themselves apart in a game because of these little fuckers.
So when you have that, wouldn't you agree that since they don't have any monsters and they don't have any shooting, that out of everything in the Khorne book, this is really the best answer against somebody else's behemoth.
Yeah, they don't move very fast, but if you can get these guys into combat with a high value target, you can. It's just a freebie of destruction for you in your favor.
Yeah, and I picked 3 of them because you can just, if you have 3 units, you can run the Bloodstorm Battalion. I don't know if you brought the battalions up, but I can easily read it.
Yeah, why don't you go read it for us? Because I didn't bring those. No.
Okay, so it has 2 abilities when you bring these units. The first is Coalescent Fury, which says that if the hit roll for a model in the Bloodstorm is 6 or more, you can immediately make an additional hit roll against the same target. So that's another way that they're going to generate even more attacks. I mean, they start off with 4 base, so this is a great, that's always good to have more attacks. And then the more important one is Storm of Gore. You do not need to take battle shock tests for Khorne units that are within 8 inches of a model in the Bloodstorm. In addition, the Tempest of Blood and Gore that surrounds these warriors turns aside arrows and bolts as surely as a hurricane. Subtract 1 from the hit rolls of any attacks made against the Bloodstorm in the shooting phase. So they have a protection against shooting. If you put them on thirds of the board, you can create an entire army that doesn't have to take battle shock tests until your opponent starts, assassinating these guys. So it's just an overall great synergy in addition to being an answer to one of your toughest problems you're going to face on the board.
So just to reiterate, this is a battalion war scroll. What's the name of it, and what do you have to qualify for this battalion again?
It's called the Bloodstorm, and you need 3 units of Wrathmongers.
That's sweet. Now, Wrathmongers have another benefit. Well, actually, no, they're not the Wrathmongers. I take that back. They are specialty units. They're not. When I say specialty units, they're not considered battle line. They're not considered leader. They're not considered any of the other. Excuse me. They're non-specialty units. They're not considered in any category. So they're the embellishment. They're the extras that you take to fill out your army after you've picked your leaders, if you have monsters. And then have you fulfilled your battle line requirement. So if you take this battalion, because it's only including 3 units of Wrathmongers, unless there's another battalion where you have to take Wrathmongers with them, you might be able to take more than 1 battalion. You might be able to include several battalions.
Yep. You can. Yes, you can. So you were mentioning, though, how they are a little bit slow. Actually, to me, they're average. Because I've been looking over a lot of the units out there, and for infantry models, 5 is pretty average for a lot of units, 4 or 5. And then when you have the infantry that's moving at 6, that's when it's kind of the top speed for things that aren't mounted or flying. I know these things are archaic terms, but as far as the looks of the models, that's what I'm trying to describe. So I think they're decently fast at 5 inches, but they are slow considering some of the targets you're going to go after. So this is why I bring into the discussion the next units that I propose. I think on the document I sent you, I said I would bring 50 Blood Reavers.
Let me go grab that.
Okay.
So here we go. 50 Blood Reavers. Wow.
Now I don't know.
There we go.
So I don't do this as a shortcut. I don't know if we're going to be talking about a tournament where you have a lot of flexibility in deployment, whether in one game, the tournament allows you to deploy all 50 as one, or 2 units of 20 and 1 unit of 10, or 5 units of 10. I don't know in what context we're looking at this.
The way the General's Handbook does it is, and it's unfortunate because I wish there was more flexibility in this, but you're taking them in whatever the groups are that you purchase them. So the way they are purchased, and you have them broken out into 50, that's 60 points for 10 of them, correct?
Yep.
All right, so and I won't say that my math is so quick. It's because I have a spreadsheet right in front of me of the points. So if you're spending 60 points for 10 of them, your unit has to be a minimum of 10. If you purchase another 10 for 120, you can combine them into a unit of 20, and that could be 1 unit. But let's say you purchase 3 units for 30 total. You can't then break them out into 2 units of 15. You'd have to, because partial units like 5 out of 10, you still pay the full price. So you would have to buy 4 units, 4 expenditures, and be able to have the qualify for 40 of these but because you only have 30 models, you can only do, say, 20 and 10 or 15 and 15. That's the way you have to do it. And that kind of messes up some units because there might be accelerators, battlefield multipliers that occur at certain quantity levels that kick in on the rules of some of these war scrolls. Like if you have more than 20 guys in a unit, you could do X. If there's more than 12, you can do Y. So being that you have to take them in increments at which you bought them to be most optimal with your points, that's how it would work.
Okay. Well, the reason why I included them in this list of what I imagine would be good is because as I've been playing the Bloodbound, I found that if I were to bring a bunch of elite units and to say from going to one turn to the next turn, my opponent gets a double turn, that really throws the initiative towards him. Then all my elite units get charged. He has the initiative in 2 turns in a row. I'm going to take more damage than he will over the course of this bad luck for myself. So what I think every army needs to play better is to have buffer units. And that's how I would use these Blood Reavers. I'd split them, if we're locked into definite sizes at the beginning of the game, I'd split these 5 into 5 groups of 10. And these would be, these guys are not, these guys are just sacrificed. They're just supposed to run ahead within 8 inches of the Bloodstorm, absorb any charges that my opponent might get if the flow of the game starts going in his direction. That way, when I want to bring my Blood Warriors and my Wrathmongers into play, I have more say on where they're going. Rather than getting all my stuff charged and losing a say into how the combat's developing, I want to have more control over that. So that's what the Blood Reavers are for. They're there to kind of bubble the core of my army and to allow me to dictate things. So
let me take a look. I've got the war scroll up. These are the Blood Reavers. They only are 1 wound apiece as opposed to 3 for the Wrathmongers. Yeah. They don't have any armor saves to speak of, and because there's a dash, it can't be enhanced in any way. So they are going to be a mob. That's why you're paying so few points for every increment of 10, because 60 is pretty cheap, I have to admit. That's 6 points a model. That's not bad. I think I'm paying that for zombies and skeletons. that's pretty impressive. But they have some other abilities. So the hordes that you're going to have of these, and if you had other things to diffuse some of the costs, like expensive monsters, which you can still take in this list if you wanted to, you could take a Bloodthirster or anything else that's a behemoth class. You would be able to take up to 4 of them for this 2,000 point list. But if you wanted to take a horde of these guys, it'd be pretty easy to do so, like you did with for 300 points to get 50 of them. Wow. So the battlefield role that you're these kind of screen troops. They're going to eat up a lot of attacks. What's the benefit other than that, based on their abilities? What can they dish out?
I mean, there's nothing really. I mean, they hit 50-50. They wound 50-50. I mean, they're not going to do a ton of damage. There are some synergies going on, though. You have the Bloodstorm Wrathmongers. If they're within, I think it's like 3 inches, they get an additional attack. When we look to see what I picked as my general, which is the Lord of Khorne on Juggernaut, if they charge, 3 of these units can get +1 to wound, which will up that up. However, if we look, I didn't include a Blood Secretor in this list, so they're not going to benefit from that. Really, the reason why I'm bringing the Blood Reavers is just to help me dictate the flow of battle. I'm already in the hole when it comes to monsters, to shooting, so I am dedicated assault, so I need to bring units that can help me manage the flow of those assaults.
All right.
Especially considering that you don't know if you're going to get the second, if you're going to get the back-to-back turns or whatnot.
Great. Yes, that is a very important component, especially if you're new to Age of Sigmar. Turn to turn, you're rolling to see who goes first. So there's always a chance, say you went second in the first turn, you may get the first turn in the second turn. You might get back-to-back. It does even out, but if you get it early, it will give you some substantial advantages in the game.
I mean, imagine if I don't have them. I could easily run my Wrathmongers up as far as I can, and then I would lose the beginning of the second turn to my opponent, who would be able to charge the Wrathmongers. He's going to benefit from the +1 attack that the Wrathmongers just kind of gives out universally, and he could easily start wiping out my more elite units, and I had no say in that. But That's what the Blood Reavers are for. They're there to be in the way and allow me to dictate the battle.
Right. You
Or
follow
even
up with your Wrathmongers. I got
yeah,
you.
and since they're going to be benefiting from the 8 inches of not taking battle shock tests, who cares if there's only 10 in there? My opponent's going to have to kill all 10 in one round, which is not given. It's going to be easy, but it's not given. So it could really tie him up and put him in prolonged combats against things he shouldn't be in prolonged combats against.
That's great. All right, so then you have two units of Blood Warriors. Now these are considered part of your battle line core requirement. So with the 50 Blood Reavers and the 20 Blood Warriors, how are you breaking these out? Are you doing, say, 25, 25, and 20?
The Blood Warriors only brought 20, 2 groups of 10.
Right. So you could combine these into one unit of 20.
You could.
And is that how you were planning on doing it?
I like to have smaller units, especially since most of my army is going to assume I'm not going to take battle shock tests. So I would bring 2 units of 10, and the purpose of this is it creates like a sturdiness to the army. The Wrathmongers are explosive but self-destructive. The Blood Reavers are just on the way to die. The Blood Warriors are there to kind of fulfill the mission if we're playing missions, or just to be the backbone of the army. They're pretty sturdy. They have a 4-up save, 2 wounds. They're for the army.
Yeah, we should definitely assume that there's going to be scenarios in a competitive environment. I mean, look, I love open play. I love doing scenarios and narrative type scenarios in open play. I've been playing open play, from the very beginning, and I plan on doing quite a bit of it. But in a tournament setting, most of the scenarios I've seen are things like take and hold objectives with quantity. All right, so if you may not be able to take and hold an objective with, say, just a one character, a leader, or even with a monster, you might have to have a unit of 10 guys. So, or you might, or in some cases, I've seen the unit that has the most models can command that objective. So that's a big deal as well. So if your Blood Warriors are kind of like kind of tagging along in the midst of the cloud of your Blood Reavers, your Wrathmongers are the ones who are dishing out the crazy damage. The Blood Warriors are the ones, the Blood Reavers are soaking it up. I can see your Blood Warriors sneaking in there and claiming objectives while everybody's worrying about everything else.
Right. And I would bring 2 units of them because you'd want one to fulfill the mission, and then you'd want an emergency stopgap in case something's going wrong. They would act to be like the Blood Reavers, except they're sturdier, of course.
All right. And what's special about these guys, other than the fact that they seem to be wearing armor where your Blood Reavers seem to be wearing nothing?
I mean, what's great is if you choose them early, they have two activations in a game, pretty much. So if you can activate them early, they'll get all their attacks in, and then your opponent can activate them later, and any that he kills, you can attack again with those models that died. And if you run yours more defensive like I do, there's also on defense you can inflict mortal wounds if you're lucky. Okay,
so for our Age of Sigmar layman, when you're in your combat phase, you're alternating activation in who gets to attack, and you don't resolve independent battles like you did in 8th edition, because we're going to get a lot of newcomers to Age of Sigmar with the release of the General's Handbook. Yeah. So the way it works is these guys have that bonus where if you activate them early in your combat phase, you don't wait where they might get attacked and then whittled down and wiped out. If you activate them, they get to do their attack, so they inflict damage on their opponent. Their opponent gets to go, and if their opponent goes and then kills some of these guys, before these guys are removed off the battlefield, they get to then get like the freebie attack in their death throws.
They get all their attacks too, so if they're near the Wrathmongers, they get their 2 base attacks plus the attacks generated from the Wrathmongers.
So that's a very powerful way to dish out some damage on your way out. So you might it means that you have to to get the best bonus, you have to activate these guys as early as possible in the combat round. It might limit, you might have to sacrifice something else as a result, but you're gaining something. You're gonna wade through stuff. All right, so these guys are 2 wounds each. They got 4-up save, which is very respectable. They've got, for the glaive, you got a good rend and a 2 damage. That's not bad. And they each got 2 attacks each, like you said, plus the one for the battalion. Not bad.
Yeah, from here you get to me it's only preference. I feel like the benefits of bringing 2 blood or gore axes, or a gore axe and a gore fist, is really just gonna be preference. I think in long term it doesn't really matter. But if you like rerolls, then you would want to bring two Gore Axes. I prefer the Gore Fist because it kind of creates a situation where after you activate, they do their normal attacks, and then your opponent tries to attack back. Any armor save you make means they might take a mortal wound back. Any armor save you don't make means you might lose a warrior who will attack back. So I feel like it's a win-win in that situation.
All right, let's go back to your list. And let me just remind anybody who's watching here, this is a list that does not have shooting, so you're not partaking in the shooting phase. And it doesn't have magic. So you are relying on getting across the board. And when you do, because you've given up a lot of that with this list, you are blendering. You're just munching through your opponents when you get there. I have faced a list like this, not this exact list, but this set of troops against several different types of armies, including my Sylvaneth, including before the Tome though came out, including undead, and including dwarves. And if you really do not want to have, if you can't finish or wheel them down or do something about them before they get to you, they are going to do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a lot of your standard rank and file troops. You have more than enough of your core troops. Your your battle line troops in this army are your Blood Reavers and your Blood Warriors. You only really need 3 units of them. You could you could pare this down and spend it in other stuff if you wanted to go outside of the Bloodborne if you wanted to. But I could see why there is definitely a quality to quantity.
I think it's necessary with this because of how many things are lacking in the list. You have to bring the numbers. You have to assume you're going to lose a lot of guys.
Yeah, I can see that. I think you could sacrifice 10 of the Blood Reavers or maybe even something else here and put it towards something big. But yeah, I could see you have a particular battle plan here in mind, and I like it. I like it a lot. All right, let's take a look.
When I made this list, I assumed I could only bring 1 battalion. Right off the bat, the first change I would make is reduce the Blood Reavers down to 30, right?
Right.
10 guys equals 60 points. Yeah, 30. So I'd want 120 points free so I could bring the Dark Feast.
What does that do?
Well, the Dark Feast, as long as the Slaughter Priest is alive, no matter where they are, the Blood Reavers get an additional attack. So that brings them up to 2 base attacks. And as long as they're within 12 inches of the Bloodstoker, they don't have to take Battle Shock tests. So it just creates another line of defense against Battle Shock.
And that's a pretty good trade-off when you can see. I mean, look, you have less bodies on the field, but that's a pretty good battalion. Now, the reason why you did that was because
I only thought that you could only bring 1 battalion.
Right. So you're playing in a local event where they're limiting that you can only take 1 battalion.
Yeah, at our local GW, we're going to play a scenario this Saturday, and that's one of the restrictions is you can only bring 1 battalion. I don't
endorse that limit. It just doesn't seem necessary because in a 2,000 point, you are hard pressed to even get the 2. I mean, I've written some lists where there's not even really enough points to even get 1. But yeah, I could see the merit in it, but just to the audience, don't rush out of your way to try and limit those battalions. There are some good battalions out there, but they're not broken, and you're sacrificing something. There's a trade off. They're not, there could be some cheap ones, but some of them cost 100, 120 points. That's a unit. That could be 10 guys. All right, so yeah, that's an interesting. I like that adjustment, but I could, obviously in this current event, I can see why you can't do that, and you pick the one that's obviously more effective with the Wrathmongers because that's kind of crazy what you got with the Wrathmongers. All right, moving on down the Scar Blood Wrath. Let me go see if I can get that war scroll.
So the reason I think you have to max out on your characters when it comes to, I guess, this new system. For Bloodbound, just because you don't have monsters, you don't have shooting, so your biggest strength is characters, and so you have to bring all 6 characters. That's why that's how I built my army also.
Well, in a lot of cases, I've heard a lot of people say you got to try and max out your behemoths, which is up to 4. You're hard pressed to do both, and depending on what list you bring. I like the idea of maxing out the characters. I got to say, I've not done it yet with any of the lists I've built. I've done 4 or even 5. I've not yet built a list that has 6. So
yeah. So the first one I picked was Scar Bloodwrath, just because he keeps on coming. You have tons of guys in your army that you know are going to die, so it's going to have plenty of opportunities to activate his ability to come back through the Slaughterborn. If you want to read that, you can.
But sure. The Slaughterborn? Okay. I'm not going to go through the fluff. I'm just going to go to the details. At the start of each battle shock phase, if at least 8 models have been slain during the turn, you roll a die. And on a roll of 4 or more, the Slaughterborn rises from a swirling pool of blood, and you set up the the Scar Blood Wrath anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches from the enemy. So you get to teleport.
Yeah. I guarantee you, if you don't kill 8 of your enemy's models, they're going to kill 8 of yours because you guys are, I mean, the Bloodbound are so delicate. So
yeah,
he's bound to come back. And then overall, he's just great. So if we just do his normal stats, he has a 3-inch range. He has 5 attacks, extremely accurate at 2+ to hit, very good at wounding at 3 up. He has a rend characteristic. He does 1 damage. Just very efficient, a lot of attacks. And then he has an additional thing where it's called Slaughter-Storm, which essentially says he can have 1 attack per model within 3 inches of him. That's just a ton of attacks.
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah, that combined with his resilience to come back, he's just, you got to bring him into this type of format.
Is he one only? Can you only bring one of him?
Yeah, you can only bring one of them.
Yeah, I can see why. Let me tell you, the biggest thing that sticks out here, I mean, look, he's got 5 attacks. He gets the option of getting lots more. Hits on a 2+ with a -1 rend. He only does 1 damage, but all those attacks are going to add up, man. The thing that stands out the most to me is the 3-inch range.
Yeah,
you could sit him right behind a line of 1 or even 2 deep, and he'll still be able to get his attacks in, and he won't be able to get answered back. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, let's see what we got after that. Okay, so in your list next we have 2 of the Slaughter Priests.
Yeah, well, actually, we're talking about the Slaughter Priest and the Bloodstoker together because they both kind of function for the same way.
Okay.
The army at most moves 6 inches with the Blood Reavers and the Slaughter Priest, apparently. So if you need to go faster because you need to get into combat. Both the Slaughter Priest and the Bloodstoker help with that. The Slaughter Priest has 2 abilities, and they're both very important. The first is where he can shoot. Basically, in the hero phase, he can do D6 mortal wounds to a character, to a unit. And then his other one allows you to, I can't read it, but you can read it.
Well, maybe make it a little bit easier to read here. So which one do you want? Do you want the blood-fueled prayers?
Yep. So the Blood Boil, very important in any game of Sigmar, is to have something that generates mortal wounds. The Slaughter Priest is perfect. And then Bloodbind helps the speed of your army by picking an enemy unit within 16 inches, not within 3 inches of my units, and they must all run as far forward as possible towards the nearest unit. So it just kind of closes the gap for you, gets you into the combats that you want to get into.
Nice. Very nice.
Also, and even more importantly, it'll help you if you have a stubborn unit in terrain. You can pull them out, thereby reducing their armor save and making it easier for yourself.
Yeah, that's sweet. He's got an extra wound on there too. Yeah, very nice.
So and I'm bringing double of both of them because in a competitive game, I know that redundancy is key.
Absolutely, I completely agree. All right, what's the next one that we're looking at here? We're looking at the Bloodstoker.
Yeah, the Bloodstoker. Again, I'm bringing 2 of them for the sake of redundancy, but I'm pretty sure unless there's something in the new Age of Sigmar book, you can also do some really cheesy stuff with them. You can.
I don't think I have the Bloodstoker here. Let me see. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, so it's Wit to Fury. In your hero phase, pick 1 Khorne unit from your army within 12 inches of this model, which is a pretty big range. And until your next hero phase, you can add 3 inches to all run or charge rolls for that unit and can re-roll wound rolls of 1 for the models also. So the re-rolling 1s for the wounds is a nice little bonus, but the big thing is to increase your run and charge speeds by 3 inches. And unless I'm reading this wrong, and they don't contradict this in the new book that's coming out, you could whip the same unit twice with 2 different Bloodstokers, and I'm assuming move 6 inches, or have them increase their charge range or run rolls by 6 inches.
Unless it's a spell, it doesn't sound like it would be a problem.
Yeah, it's not a spell because it's Khorne.
Yeah, I haven't seen any FAQs on abilities being redundant that are not spell. Like I had the same question and again, I'm very conservative about these things. Unless they're really broken, I tend to err on the side of just use it once. But I don't see any reason why you can't use it twice. Like for instance, with the Sylvaneth, they have a stomp ability. Every time you on a 4-up with one next to one of the big tree guys, a unit within 3 inches will have you -1 to their hit rolls.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing that says you can't have several of these tree guys do that, and then all of a sudden you're -2 or -3. But just in terms of just being conservative, erring on this, you don't want to be douche, But I don't think this ability I think this ability sounds like it should be stackable. But that might be something that we might learn going forward. So buyer beware, audience members.
I'm just talking about it in a quote unquote competitive sense. I would never do this. I probably wouldn't do this if I built this list, but it sounds like you could do it. And if you could do it and you're trying to be a competitive person, then you need to close the gap for yourself. And adding 6 inches to your charge rolls can be really important, especially if your opponent's not paying attention and say he has 2 units next to each other and behind it is some sort of wizard. And maybe he opens up enough to where you can squeeze a unit through. You can add 6 inches, charge past the 2 units that are screening him and get in there and assassinate stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like that. I would check with your local TO if it's in a competitive environment before you assume that that's the case. I think it sounds right. Look, you have so much that's limiting this army. These are the types of things that make up for that. Yeah. Okay.
And then 2 of them for redundancy, because if your opponent's smart, he's gonna be trying to target your characters first.
Yeah. I like that you have 2 of these guys. You're definitely gonna lose one. You might as well have a backup.
Yeah.
All right. Then this dude, you have one of these guys.
Yeah, Lord of Khorne on Juggernaut, and really, you have to pick a general. I prefer using the Aspiring Deathbringer. We'll look at that in my other list I submitted to you if we go over that.
Sure.
But out of all the possible models to be your general, this guy is the most resilient. Just because he has 8 wounds, he has a 3+ save, he has a little bit of protection against spells. I just feel like if your opponent targets him, there's a good chance he'll live through a turn. And so that's my goal there. His command ability is really good. Synergy-wise, you have a lot of opportunity to get the charges you want when you want it. So even though it's contingent on charging, adding 1 to your wound rolls through his Blood Stampede is very awesome. Not only for your suckiest models like your Blood Reavers, having them wound on a 3-up, but even for, say, your special character Scar, who would then start hitting on 2s and wounding on 2s.
Very nice. And this guy is all about being. He's just a couple of stages below being a monster himself.
Yeah.
Because he's sitting at 8 wounds, base 3-up armor save. Love it.
Yep.
And then he's got that defense. It's not just against spells; it's also against mortal wounds on a 4-up. Very sweet. Want to make sure that people know about the FAQ. Your standard saves are before the multiplier. All special saves afterwards are after the multiplier. You get them for each individual mortal wound afterwards. So keep that in mind. That mortal wound 4-up is priceless. That's awesome. A lot of them are just 6-ups or 5-ups. That's a 4-up.
Yeah.
That's sweet. All right.
So that would be my list of 2,000 points. As you can see, it's a ton of models. And I don't know. So that's what I imagine is good.
What would you sacrifice if you were to throw in a behemoth? If you wanted to substitute a monster, something, like a Bloodthirster, or give me something that you might have wanted to add in here to give some added dimension.
The Forge World guy that's Bloodbound but doesn't have any points.
Well, none of the Forge World has points now, but I will say, and I know this because, look, I have 2 Mourngulls and one of them I made, and I've got a bunch of other stuff, Carmine Dragon, I made my own Magma Dragon. Out of the Magmadroth and Wings. I want to use some of that Forge World stuff. I asked on the Facebook, the official Facebook page for Games Workshop and for Age of Sigmar, and they said that there's points coming for Forge World. We don't know what that means. I have no idea when, but it's coming.
Yeah, so, I would just pick that guy. I forget what his name is, but I've read his rules before, and I remember it's unbelievable. And so what I would sacrifice probably. I just noticed a mathematical error on here, so I'm going to check something real quick.
Okay.
The Blood Warriors should be worth 400 points.
Oh, no. Really?
Yeah.
Your Blood Warriors are, they're 2 units of 10. So each one is 200. Yes.
But it's fine. I have that it's at 1800 if I add it as it is. So.
Oh, okay. So yeah. Okay. So the truth is that this is the list. It's appropriate. It's just the subset. Was of Blood Warriors is not 200. It's 400. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So I would sacrifice the Lord of Khorne on Juggernaut, and I would make somebody else my general. And I don't know, how many points do you think that guy is? Like 500 points? 400
that dude? Yeah, he's he's going to be expensive.
So if I take
How many wounds is he? How many wounds?
I have no idea.
Is he more than 12?
He's probably 16 because Khorne's number is 8 and he's a monster, so I just double it.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. That was the one that everybody thought was going to be the
he's like a special character Korgorath, and he's
Yeah. I'm sure he's quite a few wounds. Yeah, he's got to be in that upper, like the high wound category. Yeah, he's going to be a good 500 points.
I could easily fit him in there, though. I would just sacrifice the Lord of Khorne, maybe one of the Bloodstokers or Slaughter Priests, and then shave off some Blood Reavers.
Yeah, I could see him at 5 or 6. Yeah, you could fit him in here and still have a real good quality list. Absolutely doable. Okay, let's take a look at your secondary list. Now, look, this is a sample list. Again, it's very constrained to staying within this particular. You don't really have to do this. Now, the reason why I say that is because there are, I have my sheet up here. Your Blood Reavers and your Blood Warriors are already battle line units. So you could, if you wanted to go light, I mean, you're opting to go with the Horde, big numbers of these guys to deal with the inevitable losses that you're going to take, which absolutely works and is very appropriate for the theme of this list. But you could get away with maybe just taking 3 units of these guys. Like, for instance, you could go with I don't know, let's say 30 or 40 of the Blood Reavers instead, and maybe just 1 unit of Blood Warriors, and save yourself like 200 or 300 points and put it somewhere else. But being that you're you're sticking with just the Bloodborne, your Skullcrushers are considered battle line units. Those mighty Skullcrushers.
They suck, though.
That's what I wanted to ask. You could take 5 for 160.
I think
you could throw 5 of those guys in there for 160 points, and that would qualify as some of your core. You don't like them. Tell me why.
Because their rules are bad. First of all, they have a 4+ save, and they're made of iron. The brass and iron. Their mounts are made of brass and iron. They're in full armor and have a 4+ save compared to the Stormcast versions, which have a 3+ save.
Yeah, that's Stormcast, man. They're trying to sell those boys.
Their ability, Murderous Charge. After this unit completes a charge move, roll a dice for each enemy unit within 1 inch. On a roll of 4 or more, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Sounds nice when we first read it, but no matter if I have 1 of these guys or 16 of these guys, it's going to only ever be D3 mortal wounds. So it's not very destructive. It's not even a given. It's 50-50 if you're going to do that.
Yeah, I have the same problem with the Ogre's Mournfang.
You
have 4 of them charge in, and you're only going to be able to do on a 4+ die 3 mortal wounds. I think it's actually 4+. That you do a mortal wound.
And then their ensorcelled axe is accurate but has no rend, and then their blood glaive is not as accurate and does have a rend. They're just lackluster compared to everything else. I don't know what their points are.
160 for 5 of them. That's not terrible.
How much are 2 Dracoths? That's not.
I don't have that on me. I can look it up though.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if there's like a big disparity between that, then okay, sure. But they're not terribly durable. They're not terribly offensive. So I don't know. They're just not that great to me.
I think they're pretty durable, maybe not for their points. I think that they, 4+ save is not to be laughed at. I'm sorry. If they don't have a reroll on their saves, though, do they? Or no? Yeah. If the unit suffers any wounds or mortal wounds as a result of a spell, roll a dice. If the result is 4 or more, they're ignored. See, now, you basically getting 2 4-ups. I think that these guys are pretty resilient. But you get your basic 4+ save, and then you get your brass-clad shields, which is a 4+.
No, but the mortal that's only against mortal wounds. So against normal attacks, which is what I'm assuming they'll mostly be targeted with, they're only going to get 1 4+ save.
Yeah, it seems this is what it says. Tell me how you interpret this. Okay. Brass-clad shield. If this unit suffers, now this is an ability separate from the base save.
Okay.
If the unit suffers any wounds or mortal wounds, as a result of a spell. Okay, so this is a spell benefit. Gotcha. Okay, reading comprehension is important.
Situational.
Yes, yeah, it's true. If it was just a bonus, then it would be pretty sick. But I see what your point is. 160 points. It can be expensive. I see where you're going with that.
No, but I made my judgment on these before the points hit. So maybe if they're if that's considered really cheap, 160 points for 5 of them, then they probably redeem themselves a little bit in my eyes.
Yeah, it's a little more than 50 points a pop. It's about 10 points per wound. When you consider it's a little bit more expensive than what you're spending on your Blood Reavers are 6 points per wound. You're spending 60 for 10 for this. So for a little bit less than I mean, it's not terrible. I think the points are not awful. I think the points probably reflect that they're a little bit underpowered for their, for I guess what their battlefield role is going to be. But let's not laugh at the fact that it's a 4-up save with 5 wounds apiece. That's pretty good.
I just think they're lackluster.
I mean, you could take an Aspiring Deathbringer twice with that.
Yeah. I mean, imagine it. Okay, so they're a minimum unit of 5, right?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know. I'd have to. They're okay. I guess I'm just disappointed comparatively. Like when I see them, I think they should be the Chaos version of the Dracos, and they're just not that great.
Yeah, their rules are not quite on par, but I bet you that they're cheaper. I'll bet. We can look that up if you want to take a second. I will go ahead and look it up for you. I see where you're going with that. All right, so let me go. I'll go pull that up as we go talk about the next thing. This is your second list here.
Yeah. So the first list was what I think is competitive, and then we're going to talk about what I would bring. So to all my non-competitive players out there who just like to maybe go to a tournament and bring what they always play, this is what I own. So this is what I'd probably bring. My army is inspired from the novel Call of Archeon. This was one of the Khorne characters that was in the army in the book, and I thought he was a great character because he served Khorne the Blood God, but he served him because he wanted to get vengeance against him. He wanted to fight his way, get so powerful so he could take on Khorne and kill him because he hated him so much. And there was just a lot of good dynamics to this character that inspired me to just theme my whole army against it. So everything that you see here is reflected in the books, and overall it plays really well, I think, and I would bring it to a tournament. So I brought an Inspiring Deathbringer. His name's Ushkar Mir, and I like him as my general because of his command ability. Every unit within 6 inches gets +1 attack, and as we go through my list, you're going to see how everything kind of synergizes together and kind of goes along this theme of just generating bukus of attacks. Next, I have a Blood Secretor, the Skull. Again, I like him a lot because I'm going to be running the Dark Feast, which we talked about earlier. As long as he's alive and he's within 12 inches of a unit of Blood Reavers, they don't have to take Battle Shock tests, which is great because they die so easily. The Slaughter Priest Orto, again, I like him because of his ability to do the D6 mortal wounds, which is a must against a lot of those harder units out there. But more importantly, I need him to pull units out of cover so that when my Blood Reavers hit things, they don't have like a 3+ or 2+ armor save. The other thing I'm bringing is the Skull Grinder Kordos. I'm mainly just bringing him because of theme. It would be nice if his ability went off. If he kills a hero or a monster, every unit that's within 8 inches of him right then and there, from then on out, if they wound on a 4-up, they generate double the wounds. So that is incredible amount of synergy. It's just kind of hard to kind of play through the game and line up because he only gets 2 attacks, and while they're accurate and they wound really well and they do 3 damage, it's not easy enough for him to kill a hero or monster as it seems.
What was the unit that you were asking me about, by the way? The Stormcast
Dracos. The unit of 2, don't they come in units of 2?
Were they in 2? You sure they're not in units of 3?
They're I think they're under the section Stormcast, whatever their second book is called.
The Extremists. Okay, I'll go check that out. Okay, keep going, man.
All right, so I'm bringing Exalted Deathbringer Mathroar. Now, what's interesting about the Exalted Deathbringer is that Fluff-wise, he is a champion of champions. He's like second in command to the Lord of Khorne. But how GW has written his rules, it's always beneficial in my mind to never make him your general. So he comes with a command ability that says everybody within 12 inches of him gets to use his leadership of 8 when it comes to the battle shock test.
What are the usual leaderships on these units?
For the Blood Reavers, it's 5.
Got it.
I mean, but you can give the Blood Reavers you can give them a banner, which will make them 6. You can bring them in units of more than 10. Well, let's see, I have 20, so that's already +2, so they're already 8 when they're at full health. And I'm bringing them through a Dark Feast, which means as long as my Bloodsoaker's nearby, they don't even have to take battle shock tests.
Nice.
So his command ability is a little ho-hum in my army.
Yeah, but that's the fact that they don't have to take battle. You know, these are the Blood Reavers. These are the guys who die in droves. If they don't have to take battle shock tests, they're going to die easily. That increases their longevity. By the way, I got an answer for you. The 2 guys that you're talking about, 2 for 240 points, where you would get 5 for 160.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I think I'd rather have the 5. Well, you know, depending, but 5 for 160. That's
fair enough. I mean, I don't know if you ever played against those Dracoths, but
they're crazy. I know. If I were to start a Stormcast, man, I would be starting for just those guys.
They throw out mortal wounds like it's nobody's business.
I know. I hate those storm shields too.
Yeah.
All right, go for it. Keep going.
So even though he has a command ability, I always take him as not my general, and I put him near my Aspiring Deathbringer, so he's kind of subservient to the guy he's supposed to be in charge of. And as long as he's near him, he gets 2 extra attacks, which is great because a lot of his weapon options, no matter which one you take, they're both really good. So then I bring my Dark Feast, which I have tons of Blood Reavers, as you can see there, and I use them. So I have the Blood Secator, which as long as these Blood Reavers are nearby, they get +1 attack. So that's 2 attacks. I'm bringing the Blood Reavers in the Dark Feast formation, which gives them 3 attacks base. And if I activate my Blood Secator's banner, that gives them 4 attacks base.
Wow.
So that's a lot of attacks from Blood Reavers. And I usually run them with the dual hand weapons just so I can get more rerolls. I get to reroll on my 1s to miss. And of course, if I whip any of these units, they get 1s to wound. And if I whip these units, they have a Hornblower, which adds another extra 1 to their runs and charges. So a unit of Blood Reavers moves 6 inches. If I whip them, they can add 4 to their charge range. So they're actually pretty speedy. So really, they're kind of really fast. They generate a lot of attacks, and they die in droves. But the idea is just to kind of get them up there, inflict as much damage as they can, really just tie up the enemy as long as I can, trying to maybe go after objectives or whatnot. And then afterwards, my other units will hopefully kind of clean up.
Nice.
Skull Reapers I bring because it's important to have mortal wounds, and these guys do that pretty well. And then, of course, I bring my Blood Warriors, just like in the above list. They're kind of the backbone of the army. They help me, have a sturdy part of the army that I can depend on. And that would bring me to 1460. And at that point, I don't know what I would bring. I have a Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster. I know that goes outside of the Bloodbound, but I think if you're not dead set on running an entire Bloodbound army, then you need to get your monsters from elsewhere. And I would just go with Khorne Demons. That's just my personal preference. And then I have some extra points left over, so I put Wrathmongers. Just because then if they're near my Blood Reavers, now my Blood Reavers are generating 5 attacks apiece.
Yeah, I could see that working really well.
Yeah,
I like that. I like adding the Bloodthirster in there because that's going to gather up a lot of attention and give yourself more time to get these guys across the table too.
Yeah, so this army is way different than the above army because this has a lot of synergy, but there's a lot of weaknesses to this army. Since I have no redundancy in the list, it's easy for people to pick off my characters. And as soon as my characters start dying, then the synergy drops away, and then you're just really fighting Blood Reavers, which aren't that hard to kill.
Yeah, but how would you make them pay? You have stuff here that would make them pay to try to do that. You have 6 characters listed here.
Yeah.
It's not like one of them dying, the dominoes are going to fall and all this stuff unravels. You will start losing some of your synergy, but they're going to have to go through quite a few of those characters before all those bonuses start disappearing.
Yeah, well, the key is to get those Blood Reavers up as fast as I can. The longer my opponent can avoid getting tied up with Blood Reavers, the more chances he can start picking away my army.
Got it. All right. So now, what kind of games have you played with? I know that you haven't played this full list, but what kind of games have you played with this list? I know you've put up a few battle reports, and how have they gone?
Well, I played this entire list against a Jordan player who was bringing a very shooty army, and because of the scenario, I was able to recycle units, and it went really well because because I'm recycling units.
What was the scenario? Was it homebrew or was it a?
Yeah, it was homebrew. I have a castle piece from Tabletop World, and I was trying to hold the castle, and the Jordan player was trying to shoot me out. No, it wasn't homebrewed. It comes from one of the books, but I don't remember it offhand.
Okay. Well, if you remember it, go ahead and post it in the.
I can describe it to you. It's the one where the Fire Slayers are breaking into the Khorne courtyard to free Scarbrand.
Okay.
Khorne's also trying to come after them and kick them out. So yeah, that's what it is. So anyways, I have my Bloodbound in a castle, and he has so much shooting. He virtually kills everything in the castle first turn. I think I had one character left. And then he takes the castle later, and then I get to recycle units, and then I take back the castle, and it was just a lot of back and forth.
Very cool.
So I really enjoyed it.
Very nice. Very nice.
You called me an expert earlier, and I appreciate that, but allow me to be humble. I don't play a lot of tournaments, but I am familiar with tournaments, and I hope that I was able to kind of give a little bit of an honest insight of what I think it would look like.
Well, I'll use that reference in a soft way. I mean, obviously, you're the guest expert of the army. We're not necessarily calling ourselves experts in tournament play because this game has only been out. This version of Warhammer has only been out for a year.
Right.
So even with comp and with the organized circuit, it hasn't been around that long. So there isn't a lot of experts. I can't even count how many times I played Age of Sigmar, and I consider them all competitive because they've been mostly close army sizes. But even so, there's things we're going to learn. There's a lot of new stuff we're going to learn with the General's Handbook, and that's why I wanted to have people like you on who have played the army, have more experience than the newcomer.
Right.
Would somebody who's just saying, "Hey, I got the box set, I got the starter set. What should I get? What units do I need? I have these battle line requirements now, and I want to try and maximize my capability, and I want an idea of how what kind of strategies I should be using to enter into a competitive environment." That's what I think these list building exercises are for. This is by no means the only way to build this list, and there's plenty of things you could swap out, which is why we're doing the what ifs and whys.
Yeah.
I think that we might learn quite a few things on this list, but this is I'm not looking to put out for the audience. This is I'm not looking to put out the most optimal list that's out there. I'm not looking to put out the net list that everybody should be necessarily gravitating to. The whole idea behind this new series, this Unlocking 2.0, is just to give you ideas as a starting point to then put your own stamp on it. And if that helps you whether you use Army Builder or Excel or just a notepad to get yourself a list so that you can enter into these competitive environments, great. Then I've done my job, and I appreciate your helping out, Will. It was great having you on again, and we're going to do it, I hope, again soon. Maybe we can do Dark Elves with for the next one, huh?
Yeah, maybe. I haven't really played them, so
no, but you know the War Scrolls.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, and by the time we circle back, we'll have the General's Handbook with you. You'll have it in hand, probably.
Right.
Yeah, great.
If we wanted to round it up with some truths, I could say that the Bloodbound are deceivingly fast. They are an army that generates a lot of attacks. They may not be the most accurate attacks or the most horrific attacks, but they generate a lot of attacks. And if you're a new player and you want to know what you should buy, no matter what you get, you always want Wrathmongers because they're always going to cause your opponent problems. So those would be my 3 takeaways.
And they look cool.
Yeah. Wrathmongers, deceivingly fast, and generating lots and lots of attacks.
Well, having played against them, I will tell you this. There's going to be some oh shit moments playing against these guys. And if you like to be on the side of the deliverance of that oh shit moment, you're gonna love this army.
Yeah.
I've played them, at least 3 times, and memorable each one. If you're a fast-moving army, you can try to avoid them. If you're a heavily shooting army, you can whittle them down. But man, once they get up in your grill, they're gonna wreck face.
Mm-hmm.
So good stuff all around. Thanks, Will. Appreciate you having on. We'll have you on again. Looking forward to it, and great insights. And again, tune in, everybody. And again, anybody wants to send me a list, shoot me over a list of what your unit, what your army encompasses, even if it's a compilation with underneath, say, one big faction, or if it's tell me what you have, and I'll see what I can build up. And or if you have requests, I'll have one of my resident experts on, like Will and many others, the usual suspects, and we'll go ahead and we'll try to dissect what possibilities there are with what the model count is, and see what we can come up with to give you guys an idea or guidance. Any last words, Will?
No, thanks for having me on.
It was a pleasure, man. Have a great day, everybody.